The beautiful thing about gold, the beautiful thing about silver, the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is the government can't print them. They're outside of government control. And I think it's important. I think it's going to become more important, as in this next 5 or 10 years.
Lepard starts off by clearing up a common misunderstanding held by prospective investors, that it is too late to make a Bitcoin investment. Many believe that the chance has passed at $100,000 per Bitcoin. He does stress, though, that Bitcoin is still very young. Bitcoin's $2 trillion market capitalization, which represents only 2% of the $900 trillion worldwide financial asset pool, highlights the enormous potential for expansion as it progressively supplants the dollar standard and becomes recognized as a respectable monetary substitute. Lepard claims, among other things, that Bitcoin is the most asymmetric investment opportunity he has seen in more than 40 years. He believes that due to its special qualities and growing popularity, Bitcoin might reach $1 million per coin in 5 years. For more videos like this, please take a moment to like this one, subscribe to the channel, and enable post alerts. You can leave your thoughts and observations in the comments box below. And you can also watch our other movies about cryptocurrencies and the digital asset industry in general. Every action you take aids the YouTube algorithm and greatly aids in the expansion of the channel. Enjoy the video, and thanks again.
Well, I mean, look, before Bitcoin came along, it was the soundest form of money around, and it's got, 5,000 years of Lindy effect, and 8 billion people know that gold is money. And so it's not going to just disappear. People say, well, Bitcoin's going to replace gold. And to some extent, that's true. And Bitcoin's price performance will outperform gold. And that's because they both will go up as the, money is diluted. I mean, that's a fact. But Bitcoin will, in my opinion, go much, much faster because it's also enjoying an adoption curve. I mean, gold is not some new thing. I mean, it's been around for millennia. And so anyone who wants to own gold knows what it is, and they've already bought it. And whereas Bitcoin, 15 years ago didn't exist, and 10 years ago almost nobody knew about it, and now more people know about it. And so that adoption curve is what's making Bitcoin outperform gold. But they both will go up if fiat currencies fail, and I think there's some chance of that. They will both go up in fiat terms. Now, the problem there is, I mean, we could have $10,000 gold, we could have $1 million Bitcoin, we could also have, $30 gasoline. So, because fiat, is just going down, and at varying rates, though, as you and I discussed earlier in this call, or in this conversation. I mean, some years it goes down 9%, some years it goes down less, but there aren't many. I mean, there aren't years when fiat goes up very often in terms of assets, gold and silver and Bitcoin and real estate and so forth. So, and that's just the way the system's constructed. By the end of 2025, I mean, I also made calls that Bitcoin would hit 100 by the end of 2024. Unfortunately, I was right about that, although it's bounced around that level. But yeah, I do kind of think we'll see 200 on this particular cycle. And by the way, once we get there, we might correct back down to 130 or something. But, we are in a bull market cycle for Bitcoin based on, the past cycles. They tend to go 5x off the base, and the base was called the base. Depends on what you want to look at, but say it's 40,000. 5x is 200. So yes, I think this cycle will take us to 200, but that's just a guess. I don't know for sure.
Lepard points out that some people have written off Bitcoin as a simple liquidity tool because of its association with the Nasdaq. He thinks that when Bitcoin develops into a separate asset class, this correlation will lessen. Bitcoin differs from conventional financial instruments because to its special qualities, which include decentralization, scarcity, and resilience to manipulation. The rejection of Bitcoin as a fad or a speculative bubble is another widespread misunderstanding. Lepard responds to this by highlighting the essential function of Bitcoin as digital gold and its capacity to maintain value in a time when fiat money is depreciating.
Yeah, it could all be in the price. Well, certainly one that we're all watching, and we think that it's going to happen, is if the United States decides to unilaterally, create a strategic Bitcoin reserve, that could have an impact on the price. I think that, there's evidence that other countries are accumulating Bitcoin. And so there's further evidence that, in my mind, that this is starting, so this used to be a very individualized investment, just crazy Bitcoiners were buying it. Then it became a broader investment when the ETFs got approved, and people like BlackRock, the largest fund manager in the United States, started buying it and approving of it.
Yes.
And now we're kind of moving into a situation where countries are buying it. I mean, El Salvador has been buying it, but they're kind of small, and they were the first mover. I was at this Bitcoin conference in the Middle East at Abu Dhabi in December, early December, and Trump's son was there, and so was Paul Manafort, who's a Trump guy, who did the part of the transition team. And it's pretty clear to me that they think that they're going to do a strategic reserve. And the other rumblings behind the scenes were that Abu Dhabi, Oman, or Abu Dhabi being UAE, Oman, and the Saudis are all accumulating Bitcoin. And in fact, I was told that they want to announce it, but the Trump administration said, "Can you wait until after we've announced ours?" So if you get to the point where nation states start to realize that this is important, I mean, look, nation states realize gold is important. That's why they hold gold on their balance sheet. That's why central banks have been net buyers of gold for the last 5 years. Well, yes. I mean, so let's get our terms right. Let's define safe haven. I mean, there is no doubt that Bitcoin is more volatile than gold. I mean, that's just a statistical fact.
Yeah.
So, if you want to define safe haven as low volatility, then no, gold is a better asset than Bitcoin. If your only measure is volatility, I mean, if your measure is alpha and potential upside, Bitcoin crushes gold. So, it kind of depends on what you're looking at it for. I mean, one criticism a lot of people have leveled at Bitcoin is they've said, well, it's really just a liquidity widget and it trades like the Nasdaq. When the Nasdaq goes down, Bitcoin goes down, and there isn't a safe haven bid for Bitcoin, and that's a fair criticism because there has been a pretty tight correlation. But I think that will change over time. I think that we're heading into a period where it's going to be seen as a safer haven, and I'll tell you why I say that, David. There's a really interesting chart. I don't have it in front of me right now, but if you run a chart of Bitcoin compared to the long bond, what used to be the safest haven financial asset, the long bond, the 10-year bond, the 30-year bond, right? I mean, as the U.S. Treasury couldn't default, it was good as gold, so to speak. Well, if you look at Bitcoin and gold and compare to that, they are just absolutely crushing it in the last 3 or 4 years. And so the bonds are disappearing as a safe haven asset, in my opinion. And Bitcoin, gold has always been a safe haven asset. I think will continue to be one, but Bitcoin, I think it's going in that direction. But just as with anything else, when you're in the early adoption stage of something, it's going to have a lot of volatility. A perfect example of this, Amazon. I mean, Bill Miller made a fortune by believing in Amazon early, betting big on it. Amazon had, and this is actually in the book I wrote, Amazon had multiple huge drawdowns, in the early years before it really got fully established. And that's very comparable to what Bitcoin is seeing. I mean, let's not forget that Bitcoin has had corrections of 70 or 80%. And I don't think the next correction will be that large because I think there's more universal demand. But I don't think we're suddenly in a world where there won't be corrections in Bitcoin. I mean, I fully expect that we'll get a real big ramp on this cycle because it's how it tends to happen. And that at that point in time, everyone will be a little too ahead of themselves and we'll get a correction. And, so we go to 200, we come back to 120, something like that. I'm just making those numbers up, but it's kind of my guess. He could be right. He could be wrong. None of us really know. I mean, this asset trades like a wild animal. But, I would be more worried about missing, the upside than about any potential downside from here. I mean, the model that I use, I think is a pretty decent model, is the power law model developed by Fred Krueger and, a few other guys. And, it says right now fair value is kind of right around 80 or 90. And sometimes this thing gets to 2 standard deviations above fair value, which would take you up to 200. And sometimes it trades at half a standard deviation below fair value, which would take you back down to 60. So, my view is, I mean, I don't look at it as something I trade. Okay. I hold it for a very long-term time frame because I think it's going to continue to compound at a rate that's higher than almost anything else out there. I mean, maybe if you can pick a really good company that turns into an NVIDIA, you can beat it. But, for those of us who can't do that and just want a safe, place to put your money, or, in a 5-year time window, I am highly confident that the performance of Bitcoin is going to
envisions a future in which Bitcoin is instrumental in transforming international finance. He believes that as a store of value and inflation hedge, nations and organizations will embrace Bitcoin more and more. Alongside current systems, this adoption might propel Bitcoin's value to previously unheard of heights and establish a new monetary standard. Lepard also believes that if bonds lose their appeal as dependable financial assets, Bitcoin will eventually turn into a safer shelter. He predicts that Bitcoin will surpass conventional assets in the future and become a crucial part of any long-term financial plan.